Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Leanna. Today I'm going to be doing a review and 3 wear tests on the new e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. This is a new version of the 16-hour camo concealer that they brought out last year. This is a very matte concealer, so not good for very dry skin tones, or not good for very dry skin types. So coming up with a companion concealer for other types of skin was a really good idea on their part. You can probably tell that they are in basically the same bottle, just the difference is that the cap is white on the new concealer and the previous concealer has a black cap, so that's how you can kind of tell them apart. So I was able to find this concealer at Rexall here in Canada. I actually didn't think I'd be able to find it so soon after its release. They had about 8 shades, I want to say about 8 shades available. When I bought the original camo concealer in store last year, they had 3 shades. They had Fair Warm, they had a light shade, and a medium shade. So 8 shades is a little bit better. They still didn't have anything from the rich category, definitely didn't have anything that deep. They did have all 3 of the fair shades, and I want to say again, they had some of the light and medium shades. So that's still a bit of a problem, and I know when I spoke to my friend Kalina in the US, so she probably would have been looking at something like an Ulta or a CVS, she didn't see any shades that would match her in stores either. So they're having some trouble getting a full shade range out in stores. There are 25 shades to this concealer. The previous launch to the camo concealer, the original matte one, had 18 shades to start with, and it does now have 25 shades plus a pure white. This one does not have the pure white. You can only find it in the matte version. It retails for about $6 USD on the E.l.f. website, but I got mine for $7.50 Canadian at Rexall on sale for $6.50. Mine is in the shade Fair Rose. This is the lightest shade of the 25 shades. It's called Fair with pink undertones. There are 3 fair shades, 4 light, 6 medium, 4 tan, 4 deep, and 4 rich in the shade range, which I'll put up here on the screen so you can see what the shades look like. And I'll also put a side-by-side of the matte concealer range and the hydrating concealer range, so you can kind of see what they look like side by side. Now, I wasn't able to find a photo of all 25 shades of the matte concealer range. They still only have the 18 shades that they launched with. You can probably tell by looking at them that there are some differences in the shades. Now, all of the shade names are the same, but the shade colors are definitely different, and you can tell that both in photos online and also definitely when you look at them in the store and in the bottle. They look different. Now, obviously, I do have Fair Warm and Fair Rose. These are not the exact same shade, but when I was looking at Fair Warm, both Fair Warms looked different. This is a very light shade, and it's also more of a cool yellow undertone. When I saw Fair Warm in the hydrating range, it was darker and it had a warm golden tone to it. So that's what made me go with Fair Rose. Fair Rose, again, in the matte line, looked lighter than this and not quite as true pink. So definitely, if you're one shade in the matte range, you might want to take another look just to make sure that's really going to be your shade again in the hydrating range. One thing that they do note on the e.l.f. website, they have this little infographic that kind of tells you the differences between the two. So they say that they both have full coverage, but while the original is a matte, this one is a satin finish. The original has a quick dry time, and this one does not. It says you have time to play with it. The original is recommended for normal to oily skin types. This one is recommended for normal to dry. Makes sense since it's a hydrating concealer. And notably, it says that The original will dry down a little bit darker than what it appears in the bottle, and you should kind of rely on swatches and photos that you see online, whereas the new one will dry down to the color that it does appear in the bottle. So your mileage will kind of vary based on whether or not you felt that the previous launch kind of oxidized on you. I didn't. I found that as light as it was in the bottle, that's how it went on. And so kind of the same thing here, as light as it is in the bottle, that's how it goes on. So there are some shade differences. All of that being said, so you can kind of see how it performs on the skin. I did do 3 different wear tests. I'm in the middle of the last one now, and I'm going to do some swatches first so you can see the color compared to some others in my collection, do the wear test, and come back at the end and let you know how I feel about this concealer. Here are some swatches, and I'll show you again in the daylight, in natural light. So this is the Hydrating Concealer in Fair Rose. This is the Matte Concealer in Fair Warm. This is my Smashbox Studio Skin Concealer in Fair Neutral. And this is the LA Girl Pro Concealer in Fairest. So here in natural light, from top to bottom, we have the Hydrating Camo Concealer in Fair Rose, the Matte Camo Concealer in Fair Warm, the Smashbox Studio Skin Concealer in Fair Neutral, which is continuing to oxidize on my hand, but again, doesn't do that if you blend it out really quickly, and the LA Girl Pro Concealer in Fairest. So here I have the E.l.f. Camo Concealer, the Hydrating Camo Concealer, and it's in the shade Fair Rose. If it will focus on that. Probably doesn't want to now that it's focused on my face, but anyway, it's Fair Rose. And I'm going to do a few different wear tests with this. It has the exact same large doe foot applicator as the other camo concealer. It's just got a white cap instead of a black cap. So the only thing I have on my face is moisturizer. I'm going to start by applying on this eye with a damp Real Techniques sponge. The colors looked a little bit different in the bottles than the original camo concealer, so I went with Fair Rose, which was the lightest. And in the original camo concealer, I have Fair Warm, although I would have preferred Fair Beige if they'd had that in store. The shades for this concealer just looked deeper and warmer, so I went with Fair Rose. So the consistency on this concealer is not super liquidy. It still seems to be a little bit of a thicker concealer, but it's a hydrating concealer, and it blends out, seems to blend out really nicely. Still seems to have a nice amount of coverage, but the other concealer was way too dry for me to wear on a regular basis. But this seems to have a nice hydrating feel to it. The shade is definitely more pink than Fair Warm was, but Fair Warm in this line just seemed to look really, really golden and a lot darker than the other Fair Warm. So I'm going to blend out both sides with the sponge, but I'm going to set one side and then leave the other side as is. I don't think I'm using any more product than I would be with the original camo concealer. I think I'm using about the same amount of product, which is good. Sometimes with hydrating concealers, they're thinner and you have to use a little bit more. So I did everywhere I wanted to on my face without ever dipping back in for more concealer. In fact, I wiped off the doe foot before applying it anywhere, and I still had more than enough. So for my powder, I am taking actually an e.l.f. powder. This is the e.l.f. HD loose powder in the shade Sheer. It's just a white HD powder. I'm just going to put that on the right side of my face. I know the original Camo concealer, because it was so dry, it set itself fairly well. I don't know that the same will go for this one just because it is dewier. I can definitely feel it on my face when I touch my face right now, so just something to be aware of, but we'll see how it looks later. And there is a little bit of light outside, so I can take you near the window and show you what it looks like in natural light up close. So this is the side that I've set. Versus this side that I haven't. And for my wear tests, I do try to wear for about 8 hours, if not more. Today it'll probably be about 8 hours since I got a little bit of a later start. And so I'll see you then and show you what it looks like. So I'm back for an end of the day check-in. Just to remind you, I had set this side of my face with powder, so under the eye and a few spots around my face, and then on this side I did not. And you could probably tell by the shortness of my hair that I got a haircut, so there was quite a bit of hair on my face. I tried to brush it off, but if you see anything on my face, it's just some little stray hairs here and there from a haircut. So I'll move in closer and you can see what it's looking like. It's looking really good in my opinion. So here on the side that I didn't set, I definitely have more smudging underneath my eye. A lot more mascara, which does tend to happen if I don't set my concealer. It does tend to smudge underneath, but it's still not nearly as bad as what it could be. And the concealer itself doesn't appear to have moved too much. It does look like it set itself fairly well. And there's a little bit of creasing, but not too much. If I back out a little bit, on the rest of my face where I'd put the concealer, it has rubbed off a bit just from touching my face throughout the day, because I'd put some around here and up over here. This spot I didn't know existed, so I hadn't put anything there, but so just on my face here, because I hadn't set before I put on blush, it kind of wiped off just from that. And then around my mouth here, it kind of gone, probably just from like eating and stuff, it's gone. But on the other side, where I set, I don't really have any creasing. I'm not seeing any mascara smudges, which is really good. And for the rest of the face on that side, I'm not seeing any product having moved. One thing I also want to mention is on the side that I didn't set, it didn't crease in my eyelid when I applied eye makeup, which is good, because sometimes if I don't set my concealer, it can crease quite a bit because I have deep set eyes. So overall, it's looking really nice. And the shade match is really good. So I was going to do 2 more wear tests and then tell you what I think of it. I'm going to be doing a side-by-side over top of color corrector, so I'll do that. And then also I want to wear it side-by-side with my Smashbox concealer, because that's a hydrating concealer and it's a high-end concealer. So if this compares to that, then that would be really great. So I'll come back for 2 more wear tests and see how it wears 2 different ways. Moving on to wear test number 2, and I'm going to start by applying some color corrector under my eyes. And then I'll take the concealer Same as before, I'm going to set one side of my face, so I'm going to set the right side just for consistency. And I'll take you into the natural daylight and show you what it looks like. So here's the side I haven't set. And the side that I have. And you probably won't be able to tell. I noticed under the ring light that there was kind of a peachy ring around my eyes because I was applying the color corrector and then sort of a pink tone concealer on top, which kind of made for a peach ring around my eyes. So in the daylight you might not be able to see. I think it looks okay in the natural light. In the ring light it was definitely accentuated. Overall, things are still looking good, and hopefully they'll look good later as well. I'm back for my check-in for wear test number 2, and things haven't been wearing as well as they did when I was just wearing the concealer on their own. If I move in closer, you can probably tell that there's even more mascara under the eye I didn't set than there was the other day. There's quite a bit. And that's probably just because there's more product under the eye than what there was the other day. There's 2 layers of product, and so there's even more chances for the concealer to smudge. So I can definitely feel if I put my finger under there, it still feels like there's lots of product there. The under eye corrector is quite emollient, and so is the concealer. So whenever I'm layering a concealer on top of the color corrector, if it's not a matte concealer, it doesn't set right away. Chances are it's really going to smudge. And that's what happened. And I'm just kind of noticing that the product of the concealer itself just kind of has a few spots where it's just kind of collecting into little bunches, which didn't happen the other day. And again, it's probably because there's 2 products there. On the other side where there's powder, it doesn't look as bad, not nearly as bad. There's not very much mascara there at all, and I'm not really seeing those little clumps. The rest of my face basically looks fine. I'm not noticing that the product really moved a lot. So that's what it's looking like for day 2, and for day 3, like I said, I want to compare it side by side with my Smashbox concealer, which is also a really nice hydrating concealer. So I guess we'll just wait and see how that goes and come back for day number 3. So for the third and final wear test, I'm going to be using 2 different concealers. On the right side of my face, I'm going to be using the e.l.f. concealer, and on the left side of my face, I'm going to be using my Smashbox Studio Skin Flawless 24-Hour Concealer in the shade Fair Neutral, which has become a favorite of mine, not just for the shade, but for the formula. It's really, really nice. So if I can find something that's at least somewhat similar, that would be great. So I'm starting on the e.l.f. side of my face. Same sponge as usual. There's no color corrector underneath today. It's just going to be the concealers. And the Smashbox side. And I'll take you in front of the natural daylight in front of the window to show you how they both look. So this is the Smashbox side. And this is the e.l.f. side. I haven't set anything with powder, so hopefully everything will look okay by the end of the day, and I'll come back and show you how everything looks. So I'm back for wear test number 3, and I'll come in nice and close. So this is actually the Smashbox side, which I feel has more smudging underneath because I did not set either side. I feel like there's more smudging underneath this eye than there is on the e.l.f. side, which to me means that the e.l.f. side is better at setting itself than the Smashbox one is. What do you think? That's just what I'm seeing. As for emphasizing lines, creasing, and everything, I feel like they look the same. And when it comes to color, they're definitely two completely different colors, but on the face, I can't tell a difference, which is good. And blending out, again, two different consistencies. The Smashbox one is much thinner. The e.l.f. one is a bit thicker, but I didn't really notice a difference in blending out. They both blend out really nicely, and they both sit on the skin really nicely. So I feel like I would be really comfortable in buying the e.l.f. one again versus spending more than $20 more to get the Smashbox one. And so at the end of the day, what do I think of this concealer? I think it's a really good concealer. It works a lot better for me than the original Camo concealer, which was really, really matte. I had a lot of trouble getting it to sit well under my eyes. The rest of my face was okay because the rest of my face is nowhere near as dry as under my eyes. I have normal skin, but under my eyes are definitely a little bit dry. And so this is a really good fit for me in terms of formula. I think it blends beautifully. The coverage is still basically the same as the original formula, which if you like that, then you're gonna like this. I feel like I can get away with using just such a small amount of product because I'm pretty flexible with the amount of coverage I like. I can go from low coverage, medium coverage to high coverage depending on the day. I didn't like the way it wore on top of the color corrector as much. I feel like it altered the color a little bit too much just because it does have that strong pink undertone to it. When I do not have a strong pink undertone, I am more of a neutral undertone, so kind of having that peach base and then pink undertone on top of that was a little bit too much, and also having the emolliency of the color corrector and then the emolliency of the concealer, it was too much under my eyes. But wearing it on its own, I think it's great. Definitely note the inconsistencies in the shade ranges. Just because something is named the same doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for you in one line versus the other. Definitely check it out in stores if you can. That's the #1 problem with this concealer, as well as the last concealer, is the fact that they have so few shades in store. And although they have 25 shades and they're spread evenly in terms of each shade category, like they have 3 here, 4 here, 4 here, I feel like the jump between going from medium to tan to deep is still bigger than it is going from fair to light to medium. So there's always going to be gaps towards the deeper end of the spectrum still. So hopefully they keep in adding shades and working on that. For a drugstore concealer, I think that this is a great formula, and hopefully more and more people will be able to start finding their shades at the drugstore, because that's always been a problem with drugstore concealers, really. So that's my review of this concealer, and let me know what you think of it if you tried it. I'd love to know if you prefer this one or maybe the previous camo concealer. Definitely I prefer this one. But I'll leave my review for the original camo concealer down below, as well as I have a full playlist of complexion products so you can check out. I'll have all of my makeup details listed down below, as well as other places you can find me around the internet, such as Instagram and Patreon, Facebook, and there's a little button where you can subscribe if you would like to, and if you don't want to, that's okay. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you very soon. Have a good day or afternoon or evening wherever you are. Bye everyone.